Hey, how you doing? This is John, and welcome to John's Longbox. I'm here with legendary Marvel creator Tom Defalco. How you doing, Tom? It's great to see you.
I'm doing great.
You don't realize it, but everybody who watches my channel has been messaging me all day, for the past 2 days. Oh, I'm so excited! I'm so excited! So yeah, yes, you're legendary, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Legendary, I guess, means I'm so old that people aren't sure if I'm still alive or not.
I was just saying before we went live that I met Tom. I think about 7 or 8 years ago at a comic convention, but we didn't recognize each other now because at that time we both had big bushy beards. So this is the clean shaven conversation. So Tom, I just reread your Fantastic Four run. I remember getting it back in 1993, like 95 to about 99, I think. And I was right out of college, and I was super poor, and I missed a couple of issues, and I was all confused. So I finally, just recently, went back and plugged all the holes in my collection, sat down and reread it, and man, I enjoyed it so much. Like I remember reading it, but now I read it all in order, not missing an issue. I got to say, it was frantic. Like you didn't give those poor Fantastic Four people a moment's rest for your entire run. There was, Chris Claremont had the X-Men playing volleyball every once in a while. Not you.
No. When I ended up taking over the Fantastic Four, sales had fallen on the newsstand on the Fantastic Four, and it really looked like we were going to have to take Fantastic Four off the newsstand.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't want to be the editor in chief when Fantastic Four went off the newsstand.
Yeah.
So I remember talking to Paul Ryan, and I said, we are going to be the wildest roller coaster ride in comics, and we are not going to give these characters a minute's rest. We're just going to hammer them and hammer them and hammer them. And there were two results of that. Number one, people claim they hated my run, and I'll get back to that in a minute.
Sure.
I think they just claimed they couldn't stand my run. They hated it at that time. And sales went up every issue. Sales just kept going up and up and up. And at one point, I asked one of these guys who every month he would write a review about how terrible Fantastic Four would be. And I said to him, listen, you obviously don't like the book. Why do you bother to review it every month? And I said, why do you even bother to read it? And he says, well, I have to see what happens next. And I thought, okay, well, I got you hooked.
Right.
And he said to me his biggest complaint over the book was that all we did was hammer the characters.
That's not a complaint, but you did hammer the characters.
Well, to him it was a complaint. He says, can't you have an issue where nothing happens? And I said, well, listen, every month there are 30 days where nothing happens. And then the new issue comes out. And I said, listen, if you want to read a book where nothing happens, you should read a DC comic book. I didn't know what to say. But yes, we were hammering the characters. We wanted to be a constant roller coaster ride where nobody knew what was happening next. And boy, that was exhausting for us too.
Yeah. And I noticed the credits. Paul Ryan and you were both credited as writers.
Yes, I worked with Paul on the plots. I warned them what was coming up, and we are a visual medium,
right?
So even when even when I did the whole plot and Paul had nothing to do with it, I didn't care. I thought, it's at least half Paul's stuff contributing there because he decides, how everything looks. and Paul contributed a lot to that.
I'm a long time. I got the Fantastic Four from issue 1. Like, I didn't get it when it came out. I wasn't born yet, but I managed to secure some copies before they went astronomical. So I just chalked up you guys as doing it like a Stan and Jack Marvel method. You know what I mean? Like,
that's a lot of what it was.
Okay.
You know.
When you said you didn't give them a moment's rest, I actually, because I was reading them all, and there was times where, like, I got my stack right over here. I said I can't read the next issue. I'm exhausted, and I would read something else just to give myself a break. Because, like, it was like constant, and there was what you said about the guy said they hated your run. I don't know if you're aware, but on the internet, there's people who just buy and watch and read things that they hate and talk about it. They call it hate watching. So, like you said, people hated your run, but yet they still bought it. So I wonder if you're the original hate.
I don't know. What I've found over the years is that if people complain about your run, sales tend to go up. If people are very happy with your run, sales either stay flat or they drift off if they're too happy with your run.
In college, oops, I didn't mean to dismiss this. In college, me and my friends, we would hit on girls, and we would say, "Oh, if you can't get them to love you right away, get them to hate you, because they're thinking of you, and that hate is a way in also." So there you go. Like, how many people are the new Tolkien show, Rings of Power? They're talking about how much they hate, but it just got extended for another season. If indifference is the death, you know what I mean?
Indifference is the death.
Yeah.
I've always thought that comic books have one of two values. You read the comic book and something in that, sparks your heart. Positive, negative, whatever. In that case, the comic book is priceless. If you read it and you're indifferent to it, it's worthless. And I don't care, what the price guides say.
Yeah, I agree with you. Back when I started reading this, I remember I was a little mad at you because I thought you did Reed Richards dirty. But then when I reread it as an adult, I thought you did a pretty sophisticated job with them because, the Mandela effect. But, he dies. He blows up with Dr. Doom. And in my memory, I totally remember the Invisible Woman going off with the Submariner. But that's not what happened. What happened was the Submariner came out of nowhere and started hitting on her. And she was keeping him at arm's length. And then when Reed finally showed up, I like that you gave him some sort of post-traumatic stress disorder. Like, he was in isolation for I don't know how many months. It's comic book time is hard to figure out,
Yes.
So he could have been a day, could have been months, could have been a year, who knows? But and I like that he had to reacclimate. But I just because Reed, I always thought people did Reed dirty. I don't know what it is, and so I was kind of mad. But rereading it, I'm like, no. I think he did it pretty sophisticated. The question I've always wanted to ask you, though, I got a couple of questions about that run. I was told, and I don't remember where, that Reed was supposed to be dead, that Marvel had no intentions of bringing him back, but editorial changed their mind and brought him back. Is that true?
No.
Okay.
No. I always knew that Reed, that Reed was going to come back, and I knew how he was coming back.
Okay.
We kind of did a rope-a-dope with the readers because we were nearing issue 400,
right?
And everybody was convinced Reed would come back. And
me too. Yeah.
Issue 400. Everybody's convinced. Yeah, definitely Reed's coming back.
Yeah, I remember telling people, "Don't worry, he'll be back in 400." Yeah, exactly.
All right. But I knew that everybody expected him to come back, and what we. Sue never accepted that Reed was dead.
Right.
She never accepted that. Up until issue 400. And in issue 400, she finally accepted that Reed was dead. And we even had a small memorial service for Reed.
Right.
Because once we got that out of the way, I knew I could bring Reed back. I figured, why bring him back in 400? Everybody's going to buy 400 anyway. You bring him back in like 400, 404, 405. I forget what number we brought him back. And that'll catch everybody by surprise. And that'll help sell that issue. So, but I always knew Reed was going to come back.
And was that your decision? Like, because you were correct me if I'm wrong, but you were also the editor-in-chief at the time of Marvel. So did you have to bounce your ideas off anybody? Because I know Marvel had this, you're not like.
Yeah. Here's the thing that, the outsiders have trouble believing. All right. When I first joined Marvel, I joined it as a writer.
Right.
And I worked with certain editors and stuff. And then I became an editor, and I still worked with certain editors, as a writer. And when I became editor-in-chief, I worked with the same editors that I'd been working with for years. So we had already established the pattern, that, they were the boss on the books, and I had to, please them just like any other writer had to do it.
Right.
And the guys I worked with were so used to telling me, "Nah, I don't like this. Nah, can't you do something better? Come on." So when I started Fantastic Four, I was working with Ralph Macchio, who I was working with Thor and stuff like that. And Ralph and I always worked well together, and I think he's a really slick editor. And he knew how. When I told him this, that we're killing off Reed and Doom. He knew that we were not going to kill off Reed and Doom.
Right.
And he says, "You got a plan on how to bring him back?" And I go, "Oh yeah." So, and I don't remember if I told him what the plan was or at the time or whatever, but Ralph knows me. I am a devout coward. I never start a story unless I know how it ends. Because, I don't want to get to that final chapter and find out, wait a minute, who was the murderer?
Write yourself into a corner there, yeah.
Yeah. So, now, in the course of that, I stopped being, editor-in-chief. Marvel decided they wanted to make some changes. And, hey, they got rid of the old fart at the top. Good for them. But then they decided they wanted me to continue writing for them. So maybe not so good for them. Anyway, so when I started Fantastic Four, I was editor-in-chief. When I finished Fantastic Four, not so much.
The other question I've always wanted to know was Sharon Ventura, Miss Marvel. She's spying on the Fantastic Four on orders of Doom, and Doom is, she betrays Doom. She's a good guy. She professes, then Doom mutates her. They put her in suspended animation, and then she escapes. And I never heard from her since. What happened to Sharon?
Oh, I'm sure we resolved that storyline. We might have resolved that in Fantastic Four Unlimited.
Oh, okay. I gotta go. Yeah, I gotta reread because I got Fantastic Four Unlimited also, but I didn't reread that, so I guess I missed. Okay.
Because I think that was something Roy wanted to handle.
Okay. All right. So there you go. I gotta go back. I gotta go back and read that.
If you go back and find out that I handled it, what can I tell you? It was 40 years ago.
Oh, okay. Here's a question.
Ago.
Can you give us 3 essentials to writing a good story?
3 essentials to writing a good story?
Yeah. This is Shadowpunk. Shadowpunk has a wonderful comic of his own that he's making. just he writes, he draws, he does it all, publishes it all. Excellent comic.
The three essentials that I would say is you have to have a strong structure, because stories are all structure. But you have to structure the story in such a way so that nobody can actually see the structure. And the structure has to really be invisible. So you really have to structure your stories. Number two is you really have to know what you're writing about. I often, talk to an artist before, this story is about responsibility.
Okay.
And that, anything that doesn't, really enforce the theme of responsibility really doesn't belong in that story. Every line should somehow or other, reinforce your theme. So you have to know what you're writing about.
I got you. Okay.
And the most important thing, I always say, this is the secret to writing. And whatever medium you want to write in, is you really have to care about what you're writing about.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't care, your readers won't either. And if you really care about it, it'll come through on the page, and your readers will care about it. Paul and I, we were very passionate about what was happening to the lives of our characters, and we treated them. We tried to treat them as if they were real people and have real reactions to things. These are not props that we were moving around. We wanted to make sure that everything felt real and human.
Yeah.
And we really, we put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into those pages.
And one thing I could tell is you were a long time Fantastic Four reader, because you used a lot of lore in your run. Like you went through every aspect. You went through Inhumans, the Kree, the Skrulls, the Celestials, to the Negative Zone. Sometimes in the same comic. I think, per square inch, nobody put more Fantastic Four lore in their comics than you and Paul. And I got to say, Paul draws one of my favorite Ben Grimms. Man, Ben Grimm's my favorite, so I have a soft spot for Ben.
Well, I have a soft spot for Ben too. But Paul, I think, is one of the most underrated artists this industry has ever seen. That guy could draw anything. And I asked for some pretty ridiculous things going on in that series, but no matter what outrageous thing I came up with, Paul could draw it, and he could make it seem real.
One of the things that one of the stories that always stuck out with me was all the Fantastic Four. And I think I remember the Submariner was there and Ant-Man was there. Poor Scott was dragged along out of his league. And what I liked, it was all the Celestials just standing in a forest with pine trees and mountains, very idyllic looking. And then the Watchers. And then you had the one Watcher laying out, and I just, like, this cosmic battle was like, this battle is about to happen. But rather than Jack Kirby skyscrapers and cosmic, it was just like an idyllic forest. And I don't know, something about that just made it more poignant to me. I just love that. These gigantic 1,000-foot tall space gods, and then the Watchers. Do you remember that issue? Do you remember the scene that I'm talking about?
Just vaguely. We were. I should have gone over the comics, but yeah, we were.
Yeah. I just read them. I just finished them yesterday, okay. So that's all fresh.
Yeah, we were trying to, come up with, we're constantly trying to chart new ground. We put in a lot of Fantastic Four lore, and then we created a whole bunch of new characters and stuff like that, just because, every time you pick up a comic book, there should be something new in there that you've never seen before.
Right. I love that you expanded on the Watcher lore, but you like it's one of my pet peeves is when new writers take over and they change. Like I like you don't get to change Frank Miller or Jack Kirby or Tom DeFalco, but you added like one of the things that I loved with the Watchers was the one Watcher, and he was like almost like the information dump where the Watchers were putting all their information, and he was this bigger, more important watch. I just thought that was such a cool idea, such a cool idea. And the Celestials didn't like the one, you know. That was, I don't know. I just thought that was so great. The another thing I wanted to ask you about is you did Spider Girl.
Yes.
That's your baby. For those of you who don't know, it was a What If. I forget what issue it was, but you debuted Spider Girl, and then that took off, and that launched your own line. You had the M2 line. That was your baby.
Yeah, we called it the MC2 line.
Right.
What had happened was that the What If Spider Girl, which was supposed to be a one shot,
right,
came out and sold exceptionally well. And the editor-in-chief, Bob Harris, came to me and said, listen, that Spider Girl sold pretty good. We're thinking of making a deal with Walmart where we'll do 3 comic books in a bag. So we're thinking, we want to have comic books that, a civilian audience can read. So we'd like to do Spider Girl, and can you come up with 2 other titles? And that was the start of the MC2 universe.
Oh, cool.
We were supposed to do 6 issues of each title. That was supposed to be it. Just 3 titles, 6 issues, and then as we're getting around the 6th issue, say, okay, can you do 6 more of each of those? And then later they said, we want to add in a different title, switching titles around, but keep Spider Girl. Can you do 6 more issues? And they kept asking for 6 more issues for about 13 years.
That's good. That's pretty good.
We had a lot of fun with Spider Girl.
Yeah, Spider Girl was a lot of fun, and I'm glad you said it was for civilians. So, meaning it was an all-age comic that wasn't really hampered by a lot of continuity, and anybody could just jump in, which I think is something to be commended in comics. Because my sister has 5 kids, and every once in a while they'd be like, "Can you read me a comic book, Mom?" And she just dreads it because she goes, I don't know what I'm reading. I don't know who these characters are. I don't know what the story is. She goes, can't they just make you open it up and it's from the beginning and then it ends? So, Spider Girl, yeah, okay, you got issue 11, but you pretty much got the whole story in issue 11. Like, it wasn't like, man, anybody picking up a random issue of your Fantastic Four run who didn't read the Fantastic Four, they had a different experience than your Spider Girl.
Well, I'm not so sure about that.
Oh, yeah?
Because we were trying to make sure that every issue was accessible and that every issue was a complete unit of entertainment. You probably didn't realize this, but a lot of times there would be a 20-page story with a beginning, middle, and end, and then the next 2 pages set up the next issue that dragged into it. But there was a complete unit there for anybody, because a lot of people, since sales kept going up every month, we knew we were getting new readers every month. So, we were constantly trying to make sure that everything was accessible, and open to readers. And if you're a regular reader, you got a little bit more because you understood a lot more. And if you were a new reader, you still weren't lost. And I tried to do that with Spider Girl. I tried to do that with Spider-Man. Thor, Fantastic. Every comic book I write, I try to make it accessible to a civilian audience, because I was once the civilian audience. And I want to do comic books that are, open and available to everyone, accessible to everyone.
Torchbearer, who also has his own comic coming out called Thug, he wants to know whose idea was it to turn Sharon Ventura into the She-Thing?
I believe that was Steve Englehart. And I think he did that during his run during the Fantastic Four.
And I have to bring up Jackknife, $10. Wow, I don't get super chat, so thank you. Please ask Tom about Marvel 2-in-1 Annual 7, first appearance of the Champion. I love that story, and I love Ron Wilson's art. I gotta agree, I love Ron Wilson. Yeah.
I love Ron Wilson's art too. Well, Ron and I were the regular team on Marvel 2-in-1. And around the time of the first Rocky movie, everybody was interested in boxing.
Right.
And Jim Shooter even rented a boxing ring so that a bunch of us could go there and box.
Oh, wow.
You know, or a bunch of the idiots could go there and box. You know, at one point, Shooter said to me, "Why don't you and I, we'll box?" And I said to him, "Jim, I'm not getting into a ring with someone whose express purpose is to punch me in the face." And he said to me, "What are you afraid?" And I said, "Oh yeah, Jim, I'm terrified." You know, we Brooklyn boys are terrified about being in street fights. Absolutely. Yeah. Anyway, and I was talking to Ron Wilson, and Ron says, "Yeah, all these guys, they want to fight, they want to," and I said, "They don't know what it is to be, to be a jock, to get, to really, put yourself out there in any sort of event." And so we're going to do a story where, Ben is probably the weakest guy, and yet he's the only one who understands that there are rules to these things. And he's the only jock there who really understands how this has to go. And he's the only guy who's never going to give up. And that was the basis of that story. And that story meant a lot to Ron Wilson and to me. And I saw Ron Wilson recently, and wherever he goes, people ask him to do, do the Champion. He's getting sick and tired of drawing the Champion. But tough, Ron. People love your work. So
yeah. That just means people love it, right?
Yeah, they love it, and they should love it, because he did a fantastic job. He did one of the best Ben Grimms ever out there.
Yes, he did. There was something warm about his Ben Grimm that nobody else really captured.
Yeah. He really, he got Ben's personality.
Yeah, I always say this, and I don't mean the pun, but it is a good pun. Ben Grimm is the cornerstone of the Fantastic Four. To me, he's always the heart of the Fantastic Four. Like, he's the one that was dealt the worst card. Johnny Storm's got these cool powers. The Invisible Girl's got these cool powers. Reed is the scientist, stretchy guy, leader. What did Ben get? He got turned into a monster, but at the same time, I always thought he was like the kind that never took anything for granted, the kind that like was quickest to forgive. Maybe he got angry quick, but he was, a crotchety old Brooklyn guy. I'm from New York. My dad was a crotchety old Brooklyn guy, so I know.
We're all crotchety old Brooklyn guys, Yeah. Hey, forget about it.
Yeah, from Yancey Street. Yeah. It is Yancey Street is supposed to be Delancey Street, right? In Manhattan.
I guess so.
Yeah. Some people said no. Some people said yes. So I figured, can't ask Jack Kirby, so I can ask you.
Yeah, who knows? A lot of times you make up names just to make up names.
Yeah. Logic Finest asks, whose idea was for Spider-Man to go ask Reed Richards to examine the black symbiote suit?
I don't know who mentioned it first in Secret Wars. Somebody mentioned it to Spider-Man in Secret Wars, and he was always intending to get around to it. And when he finally did, he got an answer that he didn't like.
Wilson saw my Marvel 2, where him and Angel go to the disco. I remember that.
Okay.
People want to know, did you ever meet Jack Kirby?
Yeah, a few times, yes. He was a very sweet man.
Did you ever see Spider-Man? That's why, yeah, I remember Spider-Man on on the Electric Company. I forget the actor's name, but that was why can't I think of his name? The guy with the cool voice. That was he was Easy Reader. Oh, jeez, that's gonna drive me nuts.
The Electric Company was after my time. The TV show was after the time I was actually watching those sort of shows.
Yeah. I was Morgan Freeman. Because some people say that he was actually in the Spider-Man suit in a couple of episodes too back then. Who knows? But so the Marvel went on. The Heroes Reborn came. Do you have any feelings about the Marvel kind of took all the Image guys and then did that Heroes Reborn, ended the Fantastic Four? That was the end of your Fantastic Four run.
That was the end of my Fantastic Four run. I thought it was a publicity stunt.
Right.
It was just a publicity stunt where, the people that own Marvel, everybody was, complaining about Marvel in certain ways. They had bad management. They had this. They had that, and the Image guys. Then they lost the Image guys, and they couldn't change their management. They couldn't change a lot of their bookkeeping things, but they could bring back the Image guys, and that's what they did. They brought back the Image guys. I'm going to turn on a light because I just noticed it's getting darker here.
Okay, no problem. There you go. Which state are you in, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm in New York State.
Oh, okay. I'm in New York too. Okay, New Yorkers.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll go get a slice of pizza after this. I remember at the time with the Heroes Reborn, and I wish I could remember where, but that was supposed to be the new status quo. Like they weren't going back, and it only lasted a year or so, and then it went back. Any truth to that rumor? Was I misinformed?
I don't know what the original plans were, but it obviously didn't work out for people. They had made some deal to pay the Image guys X number of dollars, and financially it wasn't working out well for Marvel. It wasn't. I think the Image guys weren't all that happy about, working on things that they did not own again. I don't know why it fell apart after a year.
Yeah, I always thought they weren't too good with schedules, those guys. So I wonder, like, if working for Marvel, you guys got to produce every month. I wonder if that got to them, because the Image comics were famous for not coming out on time.
Well, yeah, luckily at that stage it was not my problem, so I wasn't paying attention to it.
It was someone else's problem.
Yeah.
Logic wants to know, what was it like working with John Byrne?
John is very dedicated to the work that he does, and he's very passionate about it, and that's important.
Right.
And there's always a natural conflict between creative people and editorial people, because editorial people have to look at the character long term and look at every story long term, where creative people look at things short term. They're interested in their particular story, so there's a natural conflict there.
Right.
And I have the utmost respect for John and his professionalism, and I think he is one hell of an artist.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites.
He's a great artist, and he's a pretty nice guy. I don't know what else I could say about it.
Yeah, I met him when I was a kid, and he was pleasant. All those, I never witnessed all those, grouchy rumors, but who knows? I give everybody the benefit of the doubt. He was a good guy to me. Fantastic Four is my longest run. Yeah, I think Fantastic Four is my longest run of comics too. I collected after Heroes Reborn too. For me, Marvel Rebirth was the beginning, the end of Marvel Comics. It was never the same. I might as well ask you, what you just did? We were just talking. You did a 4-issue series, the Secret Wars.
Marvel Superhero Secret Wars Battle World.
Yeah, I know. That's why I let you say it. I couldn't get it out.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, I just read that 4-issue series. It was a lot of fun, and what I appreciated is that you brought in some of the villains that they made toys of that weren't in the comic. Because me being a prickly pain in the neck kid, it always bothered me that there was a Constrictor toy and an Electro toy, but they weren't in the comic. You fixed that for me.
I fixed
Iceman,
did you notice that I even used the shields?
Yes, you did. You even used the shields. That I never understood the shields in the toys. I was like, why do they have shields? So you did. But do you have a close relationship with Marvel? I mean, it's like all new people since you were there.
Yeah. Listen, I know a handful of people that work there, and I'm friendly with them all. I mean, I've known Tom Brevoort for forever at this stage of the game.
Right.
And yeah, I get along with the guys, but I'm not. I'm not one of the guys that Marvel feels compelled to call.
Which is a shame.
Well, it depends on how you look at it.
Like I said, people are excited to see you. People are excited to see you on this channel and talk. People look fondly on your work. Again, people want to see your work. I reread your stuff. I love Spider-Girl. I give it to my nieces to read. When they ask for a comic, I'll give them a stack of Spider-Girls to read. Try to get them into comics. But I'm trying to be as pleasant as possible. But Modern Marvel just doesn't do it for me. So it really, to me, is a shame that you're not one of the guys that they call.
Well, I thank you very much. Let me say this to you and your readers.
Sure.
If you want something from Marvel, you want a specific creator, you want something happening, you want them to focus on a certain character, whatever you want from Marvel, write them letters, snail mail letters, because in any given day, an editor gets about 100 emails that he must answer, because they're with all the books that he's doing. So he's got to answer those emails. And in any given day, he gets 0 letters. So whenever they get a letter in the office, the guys react to it.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So if you want to see something, you have complaints, you have compliments, you wish Tom DeFalco wrote more stories. He's not gonna,
Everybody, write letters. We want more Tom DeFalco. There you go.
Don't write too many letters, please. My income will only go down. I love, to write the occasional story for Marvel. I don't know if I have what it takes anymore to do a monthly comic book. Because that's an incredible physical and mental grind. And, I'm getting kind of old. But I right now I am working on a small project for Marvel, which I don't think I should be talking about yet because they haven't announced anything.
But it's just good to know that you have something in the wings coming up.
It's a small thing, but anytime Marvel calls, most of the time I say yes, because I love Marvel. But I'm a sap. I also love Archie comics, and I do a lot of stories for Archie and the Archie Digest and that sort of stuff because that's where I started. And if DC ever called me, I'd probably say yes to them too.
So when you were a kid, what was Marvel your thing? Were you a Marvel Zombie? Did you read DC? Did you read Charlton?
When I was a kid, I read everything. Marvel didn't come out till I was about, 10, 11, 12 years old.
Okay.
All right. And before, I remember my first two Marvel comics, which were Fantastic Four, 3 and 4. I bought them together.
Okay.
Those were my first, and from then on, I was a hardcore Marvel guy. But before then, I'd read everything. I read the, Flash, Green Lantern, I loved Jimmy Olsen and Superboy and, Hot Stuff and Spooky.
Yeah, I remember the old Harvey characters. They just disappeared, and people don't remember. Now, when you were getting these comics, did you have that like comics are trash, kid? Did you have to hide them? Like, was it something like?
Oh, my parents didn't want me reading them during the school year, but tough. I would be sneaking them in, reading them whenever I could. But I became a hardcore reader early on. About 11, 12 years old, I was reading the Edgar Rice Burroughs Tarzan books and Robert E. Howard's Conan books and stuff like that, and then from there, all sorts of crazy stuff.
RJ from the Fourth Age. Are there any smaller characters you just didn't want to stop writing, like Red Sonja? You just mentioned.
Oh, I loved, I did what was 4 issues of Red Sonja's, and I really enjoyed working on Red Sonja and Machine Man. Yeah, like I said earlier, you have to care about what you're doing. And in certain regards, you have to fall in love with your characters. And I fell in love with every one of them. So I enjoyed, I enjoyed every series that I worked on. I said, did Tom DeFalco enjoy his short time on Thor? I was on Thor for like 6 or 7 years. I mean,
that ain't a short time.
I love my time on Thor.
I gotta say, 6 or 7 year run is a really long time, especially these days. Like Marvel runs don't even last a year anymore. It seems like that whole philosophy of keep it, like John Byrne's run, like he wrote and drew for 5 years. You did the Fantastic Four. Jeez, I'm trying to think exactly. What was it? It was about 5 years. You and Paul did it for a while. Yes, 6 years on Thor. That's unheard of in this day and age.
I was on Spider-Girl for 13 years, and I was just getting started. I could have done another 13.
That's that whole M2 line. I really liked the Future Avengers. The
J2.
Yeah, the M2 the M2. You did the why can't I think Stinger? Ant-Man's daughter, I thought it was really clever. And what I really, really liked about it is as Marvel was veering more towards like almost like a dour, meaner existence, your line was like more 80s Marvel, which that is my run. I loved it. They were more hopeful, more pleasant. Like superheroes to me, it should be a blue sky, and that's why I really, really dug your stuff. I fell for that Spider-Woman hook, line, and sinker.
If I had superpowers, I'd be having a ball. I'd be having a great time web swinging between buildings, and we always tried to bring that out, that the utter joy of using powers, and
right. How cool would it be to lift up a car?
Listen, I don't believe in dour superheroes. Superheroes, this should be a joyous thing.
Yeah.
A lot of guys decided that they wanted to do, they all wanted to be Frank Miller. And Frank Miller is great being Frank Miller.
Right. Yeah. It works for Frank.
It works for Frank.
Yeah.
I wanted to be Tom DeFalco, who had a lot of fun with the comic books and enjoyed, have a joyous occasion. And I hammer the characters a lot. but I still, give them their moments of joy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You sure did. Shadowpunk wants to know: did you have a favorite comic that you weren't involved in?
Captain America. Especially Mark Grunwald's run. I loved what Mark Grunwald was doing. Captain America was a title that I always wanted to write, but I'm so glad I got to read Mark's instead. And I also loved Conan the Barbarian. When I first went to Marvel, that was the only title I wanted to do, and I never got around to.
They never get. Oh,
I did a couple of stories. I think I did one with Prince Khan and a couple of others, and backup stories and Savage Tales, but never got to do Conan.
oh. It's funny. It seems like there's a Conan renaissance right now. Everybody loves Conan, but I guess with him going into public domain now, but there's English comics with Conan, French, and I forget, Dark Horse I think is doing Conan. Everybody's doing Conan, and it's funny, they all kind of look like John Buscema is drawing them in some like such he put his stamp on that character, huh?
He certainly did.
Yeah.
Big John was, he was the premier comic book artist, of his day, and probably still is the premier comic book artist.
Is there anybody in Marvel that you just wanted to work with and you never got a chance?
Yeah, I never thought about that.
Okay.
I always wanted to do some more work with J.R. Jr. We worked together in Dazzler when we were both kind of starting out.
Yeah.
And he's just such a terrific artist and such a really nice guy. But to be honest, if anybody ever says, hey, who, you could write any Marvel character, who would be your first choice as artist? It would always be Ron Frenz.
Oh, yeah. Ron is.
It would always be Ron Frenz. And if I can't get Ron, Pat Olive or Ron Lim or Ron Wilson, the guys that I worked with, because
there's something Ron Frenz work, like I don't know what it is, but like I see Ron
great.
Frenz.
That's what it is.
Yeah, it is great, but there's like it's like cheerful and playful and fun, and I just love it. It just makes me feel good. His artwork.
His artwork sucks you into the story. You're not aware of the fact that you're looking at artwork. You think you're looking at real people, and that's the magic of Ron Frenz. He is the greatest. I think that I often say that all the good ideas that Ron and I had over the years, he came up with them. I came up with everything you didn't like.
Well, there you go. You sound like a gracious partner to work with. Logic says, I love Frank Miller and Alan Moore for brilliance, but they're supposed to be the outside exception. Not the and everything is dark and nihilistic. I do agree. To me, I like joyfulness. I like superheroes. I like the idea of these I can never say this word correctly. Altruistic guys that just want to help. They got powers, and rather than crush people, they're helping. But every once in a while, I do enjoy like a grim and gritty outlier story. But like, I don't think I think comics kind of veered off on a path like stuff like The Boys. I don't want to deal with that. I want more Blue Sky. I want of what you did with the Fantastic Four, what Ron Frenz did with the Fantastic Four, Jim Shooter, George Perez. That I just like that. It's fun. It was a joy to open up a Marvel comic and spend an hour hanging out with friends. Now it's like kind of scary, these superheroes coming out, like the Homelander. I don't want to spend any time with the Homelander. I don't know if you watch that show at all.
I do not.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
But there's so much good TV on that you can't watch everything.
Right. Yeah. excuse me. Uh, I, when you said you picked up Fantastic Four 3 and 4 at the same time, I, I I take that for granted because Fantastic Four was already coming out by the time I was reading comics. My first Fantastic Four comics was like 184 or something like that. That must have been so different to read the Fantastic Four when the Justice League at the time, they were like, I hate to be mean, but they were still like for children, whereas the Fantastic Four was also for kids, but it had a whole different tenor to it. Was that like a slap in the face or change?
They were very different comics from everything else that was out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, they were much more, rugged. The characters, acted like real people. The Fantastic Four was like a family. It was it's a family book where the family is constantly squabbling. And I came from a big family. We were constantly squabbling. So just it seemed like this is what would have happened if I got powers, and my brothers got powers.
Yeah, I had to sit down at the dinner table with the guy who punched me in the face 20 minutes earlier. I'm one of 7 kids. We beat each other up.
Yeah, and that was life. You punch somebody in the face, and 5 minutes later, you've been sharing ice cream with them.
Yeah. Yeah, because the Justice League at the time, like I'm reading the Justice League from the beginning. Nobody threw punches. There was no violence. Everything was like tricks and puzzles, and then now you got Ben Grimm stretching Reed Richards and throwing a rock right in the mole man's face. That is as different as different could be.
Yeah, it was completely different. I'm going to adjust the lighting again.
Sure. And while he's adjusting the light, I might as well take the time to let people know my comic Heroic Tales is on Fun My Comic. I forgot to put it up as a store, so Luke Stone changed it today, so it's up as a store instead of a wasteland.
Okay.
I enjoyed the Wright project with Sal Buscema and Ron Friends. How did that come together? Any plans for more?
Yes, there are plans for more. Ron and I are working on issue 2 in what I laughingly refer to as our spare time. And Sal right now thinks he's retired, and we're going to allow him to think he's retired for a little bit longer. But I'm glad you enjoyed the Wright project. It was just a fun goofball project that, we had on the back burner for a while, and finally got it published. And like I say, somewhere along the line we'll get out issue 2.
And Fabrizio, he has a wonderful comic called Horace H. Hoover, and he'll be on with me at 8:30 on this channel with RJ from the 4th Page. How was it working with Ditko on Speedball? Was he as moody as people said?
Steve Ditko really has a bad rap. He really was one of the friendliest guys I know. He really was a very nice guy, very friendly. I first started working with him on Machine Man. I had a coffee pot in my office and would often have donuts for the freelancers because freelancers like free food. And Steve would always come in, pour himself a cup of coffee, and we'd just talk about the headlines of the days, all sorts of nonsense. I realized Steve and I talked about many, many different subjects, but we never actually discussed comic books. Which, now that I think about it, is why didn't I never discuss comic books with Steve Ditko? I kind of never really discussed writing with Stan Lee either.
Oh, well, that you just brought up that one of the what was Stan Lee like? Was he always on? Was that a persona?
It was part persona, but that was really Stan. He was a very sincere and warm person. He had this magic about him that when Stan spoke to you, he made you feel like you were the most important person in his life at that time. and he really, again, a very sweet guy. A lot of Aunt May was in Stan Lee, you know, or a lot of Stan Lee was in Aunt May. I don't, you know, because
I think Stan Lee was in a lot of characters. You know, I guess
he certainly was. Now, you know, I know that there's always a controversy. Who created the Marvel Universe? Was it Jack Kirby? Was it Stan Lee? Blah 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 blah. Jack created the visuals for those characters. There's no question about it. But Stan created the personalities that we fell in love with. And the magic of Stan Lee, I always think that Stan's greatest contribution to comic books was that he brought soap opera to comic books.
Yeah.
He made us care about the characters and their personal lives, which before that, we never did. You know?
Absolutely. Like I just mentioned a few times, I'm reading these old Justice Leagues, you know, from early. You could take the suits and change them around because Bruce Wayne was the same as Arthur Curry, which was the same as Carter Hall, you know, at that point. It didn't matter, just the hair color changed.
Yeah, but Stan Lee gave them all personalities and made us care about, you know, we actually cared about who Peter Parker was dating.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, was he gonna, you know,
you got nervous if he wasn't, if he didn't pay the rent, you know?
So, and that was all Stan Lee.
Yeah. Yeah. It really did change comics. Like, again, like Fantastic Four, like they debuted, they didn't have costumes. They were kind of angry with each other. They were bickering and fighting, you know. It really was a watershed moment in comic book history.
Well, listen, I like I told you, the first two issues of Fantastic Four I bought was issue 3 and 4. In issue 3, at the end of issue 3, I hope I'm not spoiling this for anybody, but the Human Torch quits the team,
right?
You know, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, quit the team? But I got the next book, and he's on the team. All right, well, in the next issue, the rest of the team is looking for the torch. They can't find the torch. And eventually they do, and the Submariner as well. Enough of the spoilers.
Yeah. Spoiler for a 70-year-old comic. You seem to always be trade books with Walt Simonson in the 80s. Did you have a professional rivalry?
Not at all. It was just, it was just dumb luck, bad luck. All right.
Following up Walt is an act.
Listen, I never intended to. A lot when I first started, I seemed to follow Dave Michelinie, who was, who is a great writer.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh man, I keep following Dave Michelinie. I have to look bad in comparison. And Thor, Ron Friends and I had approached Ralph Macchio because we wanted to do Daredevil. We heard he was looking for a team for Daredevil. So we wanted to pitch for Daredevil. But at the time he said, I need a fill-in for Thor. Because Thor's late. I got to get Thor on time before I can worry about Daredevil. So I said, oh, well, we could do a fill-in. Because, I believe I can do a fill-in for any book on the Marvel line, or in those days I could. So we did a Thor fill-in. And then he needed another one, so we did a second one. And then he said, well, I do want you guys to work on a book. We want to work on Thor. And my first reaction is, well, wait a minute.
Where's Daredevil?
Yeah. We don't do Cosmic. We can't do Thor. He said, you just did 2 issues. And I said, they were fill-ins. They didn't count. They're fill-ins. And he said, well, talk to Ron and see if he wants to do Thor. And Ron was very excited. So, we ended up on Thor. And Fantastic Four, Walt. I really enjoyed Walt Simonson's run on Fantastic Four, but for some
me too,
reason,
yeah.
it was not selling on the newsstand, and you know, and I followed him there, and then the craziest thing is I remember when Danny Fingeroth told me Roger Stern was going to give up Spider-Man, and I said to him, "Oh boy, are you in trouble? Because only an idiot's going to follow Roger Stern." And Danny says, "Well, I think I found my idiot." But yeah, that's been the story of my life. I always had to follow guys who were a lot better than me.
I mean, I always felt bad for poor Ann Nocenti following up Frank Miller on Daredevil.
But she did a great job.
She did a great job. Yeah, yeah.
She did a fabulous. That was when Ron and I were trying. We failed, but instead of us, it was Ann Nocenti and J.R. Jr. and they did a fantastic job.
Yes, they did. Yes.
They did so much better than Ron and I would have done. I'm so angry at them.
Did you have stories Daredevil stories that you never got to tell?
Nope. I never come up with stories until I actually have an assignment.
Oh, okay.
I'm one of these guys that where if you say, is there a Batman story you've wanted to tell all your life? I'll say, no. Why do you need a Batman story? When do you need it? You need a Friday? Friday I'll come up with a Batman story that I want to tell.
So how long does it take you to write a script for a comic then? You got me curious.
It varies. It varies.
Do you write a full script? Like, would you hand Ron?
No.
No?
It's a waste of time to hand Ron Friends a full script.
He's going to change it anyway?
Nah, we're going to work Marvel style because that's how we've always worked.
Okay.
And that's the best way with us. I think with superhero stuff, Marvel style really is the best way if you have an artist who knows how to tell a visual story. Thank you for New Warriors. You're very welcome. That's another one of my bugaboos.
What?
Ron Friends and I created New Warriors, and then Fabian Nicieza and Mark Bagley had the gall to do 50 issues that was so much better than what Ron and I would have done. I'm furious at those guys. They had no respect at all. None at all.
If they had any respect for you, they would have bombed the comic, right?
They would have bombed the comic, but they did such a great job. I'm still angry at them years later. You've
created the New Warrior, yeah, but Fabian seems to get the glory, huh?
Well, he made the New Warriors, So Fabian deserves all the glory for that because that was his work and he did a great job.
Oh wow! So many good stories. So you never. I don't know why. Again, Mandela affected. You never wrote for DC.
I wrote for DC.
Oh, you did write for DC. Okay, so I'm not crazy. Well, I am crazy.
You are crazy.
I am crazy, but I'm not mistaken. Okay.
Yes, I did write for DC. I wrote for DC before I even started writing for Marvel. I worked on Claw the Unconquered, Starfire, the Sword and Sorcery Starfire.
Okay.
Superman Family. I did the Jimmy Olsen feature and the Lois Lane and eventually the Superboy feature. And I did this thing called Super Juniors. I did a lot of stuff for DC, and then I, ended up going over to Marvel. And a few years ago, I did some more stuff for DC. I worked on Hawkman and Legion Lost.
Okay.
And I did a couple of fill-ins for him too.
Benjamin Soto, another comic creator. He has a comic called Tricks and Treats. It's on Indiegogo right now. What is your favorite Amazing Spider-Man story that you wrote?
I think it was a story called Whatever Happened to Crusher Hogan, because it was one of those stories that all of the elements just fit in nicely. Peter manages to go and save the day and help somebody, and yet he failed Aunt May. So at the end of the story, he's looking at the dark cloud behind the silver lining. It just one of those stories where I thought everything just came together well.
Logic, Mr. Defalco, refresh my memory. Did you approve the black suit for Spider-Man? It's my favorite suit, even though I've been a fan since the 70s.
No, that was Jim Shooter.
Yeah, that was from Marvel Secret Wars. That was before your tenure. I remember I irrationally got angry when I saw that suit change because Spider-Man costume was one of my favorite costumes of all time. And I remember like, I'm not even joking. I was like spinning around in the comic book store so angry. But I was like, it'll go back. It'll go back. Things always go back. That's the way comic books are.
When rumors got out that we were going to change the suit, we got so much hate mail.
Probably from me too.
Listen, everybody's swearing. I'll never buy another Spider-Man comic book. Never buy the Marvel comic book. Everybody was afraid that this was going to put the company out of business. And now people look at it. Oh, what a brilliant marketing ploy! Oh, so brilliant putting the black costume out there.
Yeah, I say this to people because I don't know if you're familiar with Dan Slott did the Superior Spider-Man when Dr. Octopus became.
Right.
And people were outraged. I said, have you read a comic book before? They're going to do this for a little while, and then Peter Parker will come back. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't their first rodeo. This is what you do for a while. This is comic books. You zig and you zag. You zig and you zag, but you always come back. And I just enjoyed it for what it was for the time. It was a nice divergent path for Spider-Man.
Yeah. Dan came up with a very original idea, so good for him.
Yeah. Tom, what is your comic collection? Do you still have physical copies of all your books?
Of all I've got physical copies of most of the books I've worked on. I didn't start thinking of collecting my own work for until I was in the business for many years. I had a very extensive comic book collection, going back to the early days and that sort of stuff. And then this little thing called Hurricane Sandy.
Oh, no.
It destroyed half my collection. I had to get rid of a lot of other stuff to pay for the damage to my house. And
you were in New York, I take it, at the time. Yeah, my brother's house was under 8 feet of water, and my storage unit was 2 blocks away from my brother's house. I thought I'd lost my comic collection, but luckily my comic collection was fine. But oh my God, for they wouldn't let me anywhere near the place for almost 3 weeks, and I was like,
yeah, it was what are you going to do? And that kind of took the collecting heart out of me.
Yeah,
I'm happy at this stage to read reprints of the old comic books. I still have my Marvel Masterworks, and go to them every once in a while, and I still have a garage full of comics, but a lot of the really good stuff is gone.
That's heartbreaking. My buddy Yang Zhao, do you have any plans to write any classic superheroes when they go into public domain? And will public domain reinvigorate the industry?
No, I don't think public domain will reinvigorate the industry.
I don't think so either.
I think that it'll be just a lot of a lot of not great fiction.
I think it's going to be a lot of super fans doing niche stuff, but nobody really remembers Miss Fury. She kind of disappeared for a reason.
Yeah, a lot of the things that went public domain, just it doesn't work because to really do this stuff well requires a lot of discipline, a lot of structure, and everybody thinks they can be a writer, but it's really hard to be a really good writer. Give me a couple of years, and I think I can be a good writer.
You're almost there, almost.
I'm just about 2 years away.
Okay. Man, I can't wait to read your stuff in 3 years. Then
Okay, all right.
here we got an important question: are you a Yankees fan or a Mets fan?
Uh, I used to be a Mets fan, but when they fired Willie Randolph, the way they fired it just turned me off so bad that I turned off the TV and have never turned it on since.
Oh, really? So you're not a baseball fan?
They took the heart out of me the way they fired Willie.
I even worked for the Mets, and I'm not a baseball fan.
Oh,
I worked for the Mets for 5 years. I was the guy who did the scoreboards.
oh.
And it just ruined it because they were all yelling and screaming at each other and almost fist fights. And I'm trying to do the scoreboard, and I would get stomach aches. I'm like, I don't want to go to work. I don't want to go to work.
You know, I am a football fan. I love my New York Jets, even though they are losers, and I know they, I'm too old to ever see them in the playoffs again.
My coworkers, it's we have lunch. I'm a construction worker, but I'm not work because of my neck. But you go in and there's a table full of Giants fans and Jets fans, and it's like an uneasy peace. Like you just don't bring up football at lunchtime. It gets hot, and I'm like, I just don't understand. And of course, me walking in like stirring trouble because I don't really particularly care either way, But it's funny how some of these people take it so like guys will get mad.
Yeah, I was never that kind of fan.
Yeah, me neither.
If the Jets aren't on, I'll watch the Giants.
I'm trying to see. Oh, we got Jim O'Reilly. How you doing, Jim? Good to see you. Jim's doing a art for a comic called Crom the Destroyer for RJ. I know there was a question here that I. Okay, here's a question. We know about the successes, but how did you ever learn from your failures? If you had any failures, I don't remember them.
Oh, a lot of failures. Are you kidding me? A lot. I think you learn a lot more from your failures than you do from your successes. When Ron Friends and I were on Amazing Spider-Man, we used to dissect each issue after it came out and rip it apart and figure out, what panels we didn't need, what balloons were superfluous, how we could have done this better, how we could have done that better. And, I to this day, I tell Ron that published work can only depress you. So don't look at the published work. Because all I see are my failures.
Do you have do you go back and revisit like your stories and reread them and or is it just it's gone? I don't want to look at it.
If I need something for reference,
okay.
I told you I'm going to be working on something for Marvel coming up, so I have to pull out some of my old stuff to reread it just to remind myself of the interactions between certain characters.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I try to focus on what I'm working on now. I try to constantly move forward. And like I said, a lot of times when I look at my old stuff, all I see is what's wrong.
Yeah, well, you're too close to it. So Tony wants to know, do you still have your Odin helmet and do you still smoke cigars?
Well, Ron Friends is the guy with the Odin helmet, and I stopped smoking cigars in the early '80s. But I do have a mace, from Thunderstrike.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, I always have my Thor hammer over here. I got my Odin helmet because people were asking, are you both going to dress up like Odin before? Because Odin, they all know that's my favorite fictional character of all time. Mythological, comic book wise, I love Odin. I dress up for Odin every Halloween. I'm the neighborhood weirdo.
Okay.
Yeah. Rachel says, as an artist, she's her own worst critic. I think you have to be.
Yeah. You got to keep looking at what you're doing wrong.
Right. Complacency is the enemy. Once you start thinking you're too good, you're gonna find out you ain't too good.
Well, one of the Buscema brothers, and I don't remember if it was John or Sal, once said to me, "Every day you're getting either better or you're getting worse, but you're not staying the same. So keep on, trying to get better, because otherwise you're going to be getting worse."
That's pretty poignant. Mike's Total Dragon Channel. The Thor run had a big supporting cast. Fantastic Four had a big cast too. How challenging was it to juggle a cast that big?
It's very challenging because every member of your cast has to have their own subplot, their own story.
Right.
So, yeah.
Like I liked that you had. I don't know why I get a big kick out of this, but you had Christoph, it was Dr. Doom's heir, was this arrogant 12-year-old immature scientific genius, ruthless, and he's busting Scott Lang, Ant-Man's chops, and then Cassie shows up and he's at a stuttering loss for words. You forget that he's a 12-year-old boy. I love that. I got such a kick out of that.
You got to make sure that everybody has their own stories.
Right.
I never make life easy for myself.
No. Another question. Mike's. I think supporting casts are missing. Yeah, I think yes, you do need, and that's why Superman always has a whole bunch of normal people around him, because you need supporting cast.
You need the supporting cast. Now, I am an old fart, and I'm going to say this like an old fart. I don't understand modern comics.
Okay.
Because, everything is part one of 6 or part one of 12. And they have a story without subplots and supporting casts. And I don't know how guys can do that. Because to me, I would write a one-issue story with a B story, C story, D story, and an E story.
I was just talking about that the other day. You had 5 or 6 stories within one comic.
Yeah.
And it was almost like every character was running by on the way to their own little story, just meeting in a hallway.
And a complete, complete story in that issue. So I'm kind of.
I've been nice. I didn't want to. I try to focus on the positive. I'm not a big fan of modern Marvel and modern DC, and I didn't want to poop on or anything like that. I wanted to have a pleasant exchange. But do you have any thoughts on do you think Marvel is losing their way?
I don't read enough of them to really have an opinion at this stage of the game. I tend, like I say, I'm an old fart, and nobody cares. Nobody's doing comic books for 74-year-old men, or if they are, they're going to go out of business quickly. So nobody really cares about my opinions on this stuff. But I like a lot of action, a lot of stuff happening in a story. I like that in my comics. I like that on my TV shows. I like that in my movies. I like that in my novels. And if people are stretching out a story, I get bored.
Yes. There's one thing I say all the time, that in modern Marvel, like I'll read a 6-issue whatever. I don't want to drag people out on the carpet, but I'll read a modern Marvel and I go, Jack and Stan would have done this in 1 issue.
Probably.
Yeah, you know what I mean? I don't know why I paid $35 for a story that should have been whatever, $2.99 in 1 issue, or whatever the current issue prices are. But, again, I don't want to get negative. I try to keep everything positive on my channel, but
So write to Marvel, tell them you want complete units of entertainment every issue.
Yeah. Because
if they get enough letters.
See, I never thought of that. Actual letters. You You're right. Because I've interacted with a lot of modern people. Like, I'm always trying to get people to come on my channel and talk. And even people I disagree with, I'd like to talk to people about. And a lot of people insulted me to my face, because whatever. Because, I don't know, whatever. But I don't want to get into that. But I think the modern Marvel people, it's like, how do you insult your fan base? I could never see Stan Lee on Twitter. You're a Nazi, or you're whatever. You voted for the wrong person. We don't want you buying our. Unless Stan Lee is like, true believers, we want you to buy comics.
Yeah, we don't care if you buy them for the staples.
Right, buy them for the staples. Is your house cold? Buy some Marvel comics. They burn real well. Buy a bunch. That's funny. That's real funny. Well, I have another show at 8:30. So anything that I did not bring up that you'd like to talk about? I know you're doing freelance work for Archie. Anything you want to push? Anything you want to talk about?
I tend to do things for the digest books, and I wish I knew which digest books coming up had my stories in them. But once I've done the story, I lose track of it.
Yeah. And you said we have a Marvel project in the wings that you're going to come out with that you didn't announce yet. So I got something good to look forward to in the future, because I bought that the Battle Worlds, the sequel, because it just looked like classic Marvel to me, and and I'm like, wow, what is it? And I saw your name, and I'm like, and it was just like a fun 4-issue. I don't mean this in any bad way, but like a throwback to like fun comics. I did enjoy it. I enjoyed it a lot, and it actually made me sad, because it made me how much I enjoyed it and how much I miss. Like I miss Spider-Man. I miss the Fantastic Four, but they're not the same anymore. Part of it is maybe I'm not the same, but like you said, nobody's writing for 74-year-old men. They're not writing for 56-year-old men either.
And and I'll be honest, I'm writing for 16-year-olds of all ages, and that's what I've always written for when it comes to comic books. And I'm glad I'm touching the 16-year-old in you, and all the other readers. Yep. And if you want me to do more work for Marvel, write to Marvel. Tell them.
I will. I got nothing else to do for a couple of months while I'm sitting at home with a broken neck. I might as well write letters, try to make the world a better place.
But don't write too many letters, because man,
you write a moderate amount. You don't.
I don't mind doing the occasional project, but
just enough to get you an annual or two. How's that?
All right. And,
we'll end on the all-important question, since you are doing work for Archie. Is it Betty or Veronica? Who's the?
Veronica is the one that has his, just has his heart. But Betty is the one that he really should choose.
Yeah, I'm a Betty and Marianne man, no question.
All right.
But thanks a lot. Thank you everybody in the chat. Thank you, Tom. I would love to talk to you again sometime in the future. This was a blast. I still have so much more I could talk to you about. I could blather for hours and hours and hours. But thank you so much. This is a pleasure.
Thanks for being there.
I thank you for years of such good comics that I just enjoyed, and I'll enjoy for the rest of my life. They're so good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.